as it is explained, term, which means it eventually will terminate at some point. Generally it's the cheapest because of when it's gonna terminate and it does not cover you for your whole life. Now, the other, it also can't be used as a tax wealth building, planning strategy. And because of that, obviously because of the, expiring of the policy. Now, the other term that we have is whole life. Whole life, obviously, it says it covers your whole life. Premiums are generally higher than the term because of the fact that it covers your whole life. And it also, the premiums are locked in for life, which means if you get a premium for about $50, $60, you'll be paying that for the full term of the policy. Whereas with term, they generally increase every 5 years, 5 to 10 years. And that's called a graded, which it means, again, it increases generally $10 to $15, I've seen from experience. So also with the whole life, it can be as well, it builds cash value. So when you're paying your premiums, normally I think it's about 6%. I know carriers are different, but I've seen it was like 6%, correct? That they will take from your premium that will go towards your cash value. So if you're paying $70 for your premium, 6% of that premium will be going into another bucket, which is called cash value. So it's going the principal towards your $50,000 policy, as well as your building cash value. So over time, you'll be able to get that cash from your policy and borrow. I don't know if you ever heard someone say they're borrowing from their insurance policy. So that's basically the method that they're using, but you have to have a whole life policy to be able to do that. Term does not offer that. Does that make sense to you guys?
And how long does the term policies last generally?
So they're coming 10, 20, and 30. I've seen 25 as well, with specific kinds of, I think it's the mortgage protection that's another conversation. But the 25, but I see it's generally 10, 20, and 30. And most of the time people do the 30 because it's the longest. But on the term policy, they also have now what we are, because we are licensed brokers and we work independently, so we work with over 40 different carriers. So with that being said, our new our carriers that we work with, they offer for the term policy, they offer returns of premium. So at the end of that term, you'll get your premium back. So if you're paying over the 30 years, you're paying $50 or $60, whatever, at the end of that term, you'll get that money back, which is called a return of premium.
Thanks.
Does that make sense? Yeah. All right. So also on the whole life, typically, like we said, it's more expensive because it is covering you your whole life, whereas term is going to be cheaper because it's got the term out 10, 20, 30, right? Okay. Has anyone ever heard of a GoFundMe? GoFundMe? A GoFundMe campaign?
That's what I was. What's that?
A GoFundMe campaign. So a GoFundMe campaign, you can do it for a lot of different things actually, but specifically what we're talking about is for final expenses. A lot of the times I've seen on the internet or even on TV sometimes I've seen them where a person passed away in their family, and so they build, it's a fundraiser is the best way to explain it. It's a fundraiser.
They don't have enough to.
Correct. Yes.
That happened to my friends.
Oh.
That they didn't have enough money for burial.
Correct.
So they keep the bodies until they're paid.
Yes.
You're not able
Unfortunately.
to bring them home.
Yes. Unfortunately, that's one of the stipulations with the funeral homes. I know there is one local here that will work with you. He's out of Haines City. It's actually a friend of the family that I've known for years, but he actually works with families to where he'll allow you to have a payment plan. He'll go ahead and do the service, but of course you have to put a percentage down, and then you can pay as you go. But he will allow you to still have your arranged, your funeral arranged.
Is that home in Haines City?
That is correct, sir.
Yeah.
That is
I
correct.
work with him.
You've worked with him, so you're
Yeah.
familiar. So yes, exactly. Claude Home Funeral Home. That's the only local that I know that will allow you to do that. But other than that, like she said, they want their money like yesterday.
Even if you pre-plan your funeral, so there's a lot of funeral homes where you can actually go to and have it pre-planned. In other words, you go there and say, this is what I'm looking for. I want this type of burial, or I want this type of cremation. There's 3 types of cremation. She'll go over with them. But when you tell them what it is that you want, they're going to tell you how much it costs.
Right.
And you pre-plan for it. The only issue with that is we know our day of birth, but we don't know our day of death.
No.
So in other words, if we do the pre-planning at the funeral home and we don't finish paying off, our families still have to figure out where they're gonna get the rest of the money from. So it just makes more sense to make sure you have the right type of policy. Even if you already have one, maybe your children got you one, doing a policy review to make sure you have what you think you have, and we'll tell you why right now in a moment.
Exactly. So again, like I said, GoFundMe. Generally, like I said, it's a campaign. It's a fundraiser. They fish fries, car washes, T-shirt sales, candy sales, cookie bake sales, all of that. And they also have GoFundMe's, which they go on the internet. They post and say, "Hey, this is what I need for the family. Can you basically provide? We're trying to raise $10,000." And the bad part about that is 12% of the GoFundMe campaigns do not reach their goals. So they'll be up there, which is even more heart-wrenching because you're already in a devastating situation. You want to see if someone in the community can help, and then you don't even reach your goal. So you're still short of what you should, or what you feel, what you need, basically, to have the proper service for whomever it was that passed away. The other thing is, give me just one moment. I'm gonna come on this side. I'm gonna make sure I don't miss anything. Gotcha. Okay. So, also, have anyone ever heard of? We'll actually take this down. Let me take it down because we already know it's fine with things.
Yes.
So, have anyone ever heard? Do you know the difference between cremation and burial? You do. Can you tell me?
Well, they bury you or they burn you.
That is the simplest way, right? Simplest. She said that either you're buried or you're burned. So for cremation, as we were mentioning, there are 3 different types of cremation. The first type of cremation is just a regular standard cremation, which is most of the time the cheapest cremation that you have. That cremation runs between $800 and $2,000. That's just a simple cremation. And that's just there's no service, there's no anything. You just cremate it. There's no family, no nothing really much. You just have the cremation and that's it. They return the cremains back to you. The second form is the
Celebration of life.
yes, the celebration. I'm like, I can't see, my eyes are actually blurry today. Yeah, so the celebration of life. The celebration of life is where you have a service. It's just with the funeral home or at the church. With the cremation of life, those are generally $2,000 to $6,000. $2,000 to $6,000. So we need to make sure that we have enough coverage to be able to at least have a cremation. And that was just in 2023, was that right? 2023. So as everything else, food, gas, everything else, inflation, of course, by the years, inflation is gonna increase, unfortunately. We just know it, right? So the third and final is the full service, and with the full service, again, that's whatever your family can afford. That's a full service, that's having maybe doves released, that's having, more than just an actual service. And that's basically, like we said, whatever your family can afford. And those start at $6,000 and go up to whatever your family can afford based on what you want. Does anyone have any questions so far? Or am I going too fast for anyone? Can everyone hear me good? Yes?
Has
Yes.
anyone decided if they thought for themselves rather you want a cremation or burial?
My husband was cremated.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I want.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
There is, if you pay for the cremation in advance, you get discounted. I got over $1,000 back out of what I purchased because I had prepaid. But by prepaying for your cremation, it helps, it saves you in the end.
Yes. I know a lot of them.
And the only thing I don't see that you have is being able to go to Bushnell.
So Bushnell, is that for the veterans, correct?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So we do have forms, information with that.
I already have that, but I have a problem with it because my husband's name is misspelled on his discharge. But I have contacted the funeral home And cause they said there may be a problem then, cause we're both supposed to be buried then.
So you guys were both in the military?
But
Were you both in the military?
he
He was. Okay. And the military took care of his burial, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so
But
they
we
do,
were able to have a military funeral.
yes, that's one
Yeah.
thing they do is take care of the funeral, the casket. They will cover that on those ends for you. But you definitely wanna make sure you have,
But like I'm telling people, it's best to pay it in advance.
yes, absolutely.
It helps the family because there are so many things they have to do.
How should you review that?
Alright,
I-
so, yes, you can.
I went to that VA office out there
Mhm.
on 27th. There's a VA office out there.
So that's who you got that $1,000
And that's where
discount
he
from.
discovered the mistake.
Yeah, so they're gonna be the one that has to correct that, or is it his, death certificate that has?
He just said he wasn't gonna do anything. So I called him. I didn't know what to do then.
So is it, you said his main name is misspelled, is it on his,
On his discharge
discharge,
paper.
you
Yeah,
said
that
his discharge
special-
paper?
I
Okay,
know
so,
that special number discharge paper.
yeah, so that's gonna be an issue from the actual VA, they're gonna have to be, the one.
All the other papers have his name correct.
Yeah, you're gonna have to unfortunately contact the VA because we don't have that, control of that, and the
Okay.
VA has the control
All right.
and actually, produce and provide the, discharge paperwork, and they would be the one that has to make any changes or additions to the paperwork, to the.
All right, I'll try to, I wanna get it taken care of.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Those forms there, that'll give you a little bit of information too, as far as, the VAs, what they will cover, and what, they won't cover.
Was
Okay.
anybody else in the VA?
My husband was, and he's buried at Bushnell. He was buried there in January of 2020, and I had a question about that.
Yes, ma'am.
Kind of gives me the creeps of him being dug up and then me being placed on top of him. Do they put the caskets in any sort of, anything besides just the casket when they put them in the ground?
Generally, there is a vault. It comes with a concrete vault. They don't just put a casket in the ground. There's a concrete box. And the casket goes in that, and then that is buried. And they would only dig down to the top of that box, to that vault, and put another vault in, and then put your casket on top of it. That's generally how that works.
Yes.
Okay.
Because you're going on top and you're not, it's not like you're gonna dig him up, put you down, and then put him
Oh,
up.
that's
Yeah,
what someone told me.
No, they can't stop, no.
And I could just see the whole thing coming
Unless you wanna be in the casket with him.
Yeah, right.
You won't know you'll be dead. It'll be fine, you'll be dead.
Recently, my daughter and her husband were brought to the cemetery, and they were in a black bag in their urns, and they dug a hole at the foot of the grave, and they put their bag with their urns, and they just kept putting dirt and dirt and dirt and dirt.
on top of the casket.
No, the casket is like here,
If you're cremated.
it was here, it was
And they're putting your
cremated,
cremation over
So
top
they
of
were-
a grave.
put here in the dirt.
Oh, so you can put a cremated remains over top.
You have to get
casket.
special
Yes, you
permission.
have to get permission. You can't just go to the cemetery and start digging and putting stuff in the
Yeah.
ground. You'll get arrested.
That is true.
You're on
this
You'll be,
side.
yeah, that'll be
If you're
a
walking on this side of the
trespassing.
dirt, you'll be like this.
Yes, that is true. Miss Marty is so hilarious. But that is true. That's the most simplest way to explain it. And like you said, you will go to jail. You can't just because then they'll be you'll be disturbing the resting. You'll be disturbing their grave. You'll be that's against the law. Yeah, like you said, you can't just go to digging.
That's right, because if you could, people would be robbing graves everywhere.
Yeah,
Cause some people are buried with the family jewels, cause they thought they could take it with them.
Exactly.
And then, you know, some heathens would be out there digging them up trying to get it.
Exactly. Take it to the
That's
pawn
why they
shop now.
Yeah, exactly, to the pawn shop, and that's why they don't want you to do that.
So does, anyone know the difference between final expense and whole, oh, sorry, you had a question?
No, go ahead.
Okay, well, does anyone know the difference between, final expense and whole life? No? Okay, so whole life is, like I said, a policy that covers your whole life. Final expense is specifically just to handle your burial and your cremains. So, like we were talking about before with the funeral home, again, you died today, they want their money yesterday. So with final expense policies, they pay out within like 24 to 48 hours. Whereas a whole life policy, sometimes you'll see within the fine print that it takes 3 to sometimes 6 weeks to pay out.
6 months.
Or 6 months, excuse me. And actually, no lie, just a few moments ago when I went to Publix down the street, I was in the line getting the orange juice, and there was a lady, she's like, oh, you dress nice, thank you, and I'm having an event, and I asked her, I said, do you have a life insurance? And she goes, no, actually my husband just passed away, and I'm like, I'm sorry. And she's like, well, I'm still waiting, his stuff is tied up in probate. Like, I still haven't had access to it. And that's one of the bad things, I'm going to say bad, but the negatives for a whole life policy versus a final expense, if that gives you a visual. Because final expense, again, they pay out within, like I said, 24 to 48 hours. That way your family can go ahead. And then with whole life, if you say you have a $50,000 policy, and just say a $10,000 policy, and the funeral home says your funeral is worth $10,000. If you have a whole life, you will have to sign over collateral. You'll just receive a copy of the insurance policy, and then you'll sign it over to, in our case, we'll say Claude Holmes Funeral Home, and Claude Holmes will say that your funeral was $10,000, when in actuality it may not have been $10,000. If that makes sense to you guys. So that's why we also too like to push forward for final expense, because with final expense, your family's paid out in 24 to 48 hours, whereas a whole life, again, if you sign over that policy, your family won't get any funds until the funeral home get paid. So does that make sense as well?
Yeah. Does everybody here know what they have? Does anybody here know how to find out what they have?
I don't know what you mean
What
by
is
what they
it?
have.
What insurance you have?
For your
Yes.
final
For your
expenses.
final expense or insurance
They
period.
don't have insurance?
No.
Okay,
Name
so that's
of
the
the
reason why
insurance.
we're here today, is to give you guys education on it. But we're also here to also help you guys, because all three of us are licensed independent brokers. We all work for the same upline, but we all have access to over 40 different carriers. So we're gonna hang out a little bit after the presentation, and you guys get your donuts, and we can review. If you already have a policy, you can feel free to go to your room, or if you don't have it right now, we can schedule. All of us have our calendars, we can come back. And actually myself and Caitlin, we're more local. Leah, she came in from St. Pete, but however, I'm quite sure she will be willing to come over and assist as well. But if you guys have policies, be more than glad to go get them now. And if you don't have policies and you have questions, then like I said, we're hanging around here, and we can go ahead and discuss any questions that you guys may have, okay?
So you're an insurance company.
Well, I'm not a company. We're independent brokers, so we work for ourselves. We're our own boss, so to say. I work
But you're not with a funeral parlor.
No ma'am.
And I mean,
I mean, we basically can give you a policy. So do you have a policy?
I don't know what you mean by.
A life insurance policy or a
Yeah.
final expense.
Yes.
So yes, you do have one.
And you know what kind of policy you have?
Yeah, it's whole life.
Okay.
Okay. When was
That isn't going to be used for funeral expenses, it's going to be used for life afterwards.
For the family
so
members.
for legacy, for
Yeah.
generational.
Yeah, I don't have any insurance because I don't have a pension. And I'm not worth having
You don't have to
insurance
have a
over.
Yeah, you
pension.
don't have to have a pension.
You don't
Well,
have
I
to
know
be
that,
working.
but I'll get part of my husband's pension, but he has a life insurance policy to help me because my pension will go down when he dies.
Okay, so basically for
Yeah.
retirement
You
purposes.
don't need to get it,
What? What?
your own pension.
I don't have a pension.
I know.
So with your situation, your husband has a pension plan, and his pension is in regards taking care of you and for when
Right.
something happens. Let's say something happens to you. what does he have to take care of your
He's got-
final
He
expenses?
doesn't have to worry,
Okay, awesome, great.
you know.
Alright, well, like I said, in insurance, everybody, case is different. Everybody's, as you can see, her case, she already kind of have everything established. Vice versa, if something happened to her or something happened to the husband. But as, you know, we have another case over here where she don't have any at all. And then we may have another case where someone has it and they don't know what they have. They want to know exactly what it is. I mean,
That's
instead
why I
of just
was
saying,
asking that question, if
Yeah.
everybody here knows what they have.
Because even with her situation, she has a whole life policy, so if something happens, she won't be paid out, her family won't be paid out when something happens, until in 3 weeks to 6 months.
exactly.
So even though she has a whole life policy, it's way different than final expenses. Final expenses will help your family have the $5,000 they need for your cremation or burial in the next 24 to 72 hours. A whole life policy, yes, her policy, she says she's good, but when she passes, her husband won't have access to any money.
And her husband is I'm not gonna say that, but like the lady that I was just explaining in public. It's gone to probate, she's waiting, and once the probate is basically a credit area to where everybody say, hey, Betty owes me $30, Betty owes me $50, Betty owes me, so that policy will go towards those creditors, and then once those creditors get their money, then the rest of the money will go to the family and say, hey, you got $30 left out of the $50,000 life insurance policy.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Because you have to pay your debts first
Exactly,
before they
exactly.
pay you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and again, like I said, and then her family, in her case, she will have to wait again. And again, once the funeral is paid off, then her family will get, or her husband will get whatever money is left. Alright? So, again, like Ms. Marty said, do you guys, anyone else have the insurance policy? No?
If your children have gotten one on you, I see that a lot when I come.
I don't know if my daughter has it.
So the great question is if they're able to give them a quick call and just say, hi, we had an event today and we had a few young ladies come in and explain to us about final expenses. And we found out the cost of funerals are rising, 1. And 2, we found out that we have policies, but we don't know if we have what you need when we pass. If I were to pass, or if I were to get in a car accident, or injured, or God forbid something happens. These policies have living benefits. Let's just say you get a critical illness, chronic cancer, terminal illness, any type of illness while you're alive, because you have this policy, this insurance company will actually give you 90% of your policy to take care of you while you're living.
Correct.
So right now, we're in a place where we don't have cancer, or we haven't experienced a heart attack or a stroke, but let's say we have, or we do. The cool thing about having that coverage is the insurance company will pay you out 90% of your policy.
And which one is that?
With our final expense.
And those
So-
are considered life or living benefits is what we call, if you hear us speak about life or living benefits, that's what she's referring to.
So like the Chronicle, if you had a stroke, if you got in a really bad car accident and you're injured, like for example, a good friend of mine, she was only in her early 20s, but thankfully, yes, she understood to get a policy, because even when you're young, you can get in a car accident and pass. It doesn't matter our ages. So because she had a policy, when she got in that accident, she was out of work for 8 months. She was extremely injured. But because she had an insurance policy, they paid her $15,000 every single month for those 8 months that she was out of work. Why? Because she had a policy that always will provide a death benefit. That's what insurance does. It provides a death benefit. But a lot of people don't know is they provide living benefits. Car accident, critical illness, if you get a stroke, if you have a heart attack, you may not be able to do the things you could do prior to that situation. So the cool thing is, on top of knowing you have that death benefit, it's good to know you have that insurance security. God forbid something major happens medical-wise, where you're not the same anymore. Does it make sense? So, we'll let you guys get some donuts and stuff. A lot of our clients, by the way, you guys are already on a fixed income. I don't know if anybody hears. Most of them are on a fixed income, Social Security. So we do have coverage and plans that can truly meet your needs. You just have to come up to us. We can just maybe discuss a few things and schedule a time to get you guys squared away, okay? But other than that, we got our donuts for you. And we got juice and water. Does anybody want some water? No water? Okay. Anybody else water? You like water? Okay.
Probably need some juice, so you can sweeten up a little bit.
I'm gonna go grab the water. I totally just
Sweeten up a little.
Okay.